The Petrov family, eager for one last vacation before the end of summer, packed their bags and set off to a secluded cabin in the deep woods. They had been planning this vacation for a long time, dreaming of peaceful days away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Sergei, the head of the family, was looking forward to fishing in a nearby lake, where he hoped to catch a big fish and enjoy the tranquility of nature. He hadn't been fishing in a long time and was eagerly awaiting this moment. His wife, Anna, dreamed of reading in the shade of the trees, enjoying the fresh air and the singing of birds. She took with her several books that she had long wanted to read, but couldn't find the time for in everyday life.
Dad, are we there yet? It's so dark already. The children couldn't wait until they finally reached the cabin and began their adventures.
Soon, my little sunflower. We're almost there. Sergey tried to calm the children down, understanding their impatience.
Their daughters, 10-year-old Lisa and 8-year-old Masha, were delighted at the prospect of exploring the uncharted forest. They dreamed of finding secret paths, seeing wild animals, and collecting beautiful leaves and flowers. The way to the cabin was long, and the road seemed endless. They drove along winding paths, surrounded by dense forest. The sun was already beginning to set below the horizon when they finally turned onto a dirt road leading to their destination. The forest was getting thicker and the shadows from the trees were lengthening, creating a mysterious atmosphere. The trees pressed close to the road as if trying to engulf them entirely. Branches creaked in the wind, adding a slightly ominous feel to their journey. An unpleasant feeling gripped Anna as they went deeper into the forest. Goosebumps ran down her spine and she couldn't get rid of it. It seemed to her that someone was watching them from the darkness.
Don't worry, Anya. Sergey noticed her anxiety and tried to calm her down. It's just the forest playing tricks on you. He smiled, hoping his words would help her relax and enjoy the ride.
The cabin, when they finally reached it, seemed to materialize out of the darkness like a ghost. It stood there, hidden among the trees, as if waiting for their arrival. It was a small, dilapidated structure that seemed to have seen better days many years ago. Its walls, once strong and sturdy, now looked fragile and vulnerable. Its wooden walls were grey and weathered with time. Each board told its own story of the harsh winters and hot summers they'd endured. The windows, most of which were boarded up, stared at them like empty eyes, devoid of life and light. They were silent witnesses to the time that had passed, and the porch sagged dangerously to one side, as if ready to collapse under the weight of memories.
Well, it's quaint, said Sergey, trying to find at least something positive about this place.
Sergei said, trying to put a cheerful tone in his voice as he unloaded the bags from the trunk. He knew his family needed a break and hoped this place could provide it. He tried to ignore how the shadows clung to the house as if trying to hold it in their embrace. The forest around was thick and dark, creating a sense of isolation, like the silence of the forest pressing from all sides. The sounds of nature, usually soothing, seemed ominous and alarming here. Lisa and Masha, their initial delight replaced by fear of the eerie atmosphere, clung to their mother's legs, their eyes wide with terror. As they cautiously approached the front door, every step seemed to echo in the silence, heightening their anxiety. Rusty hinges creaked in protest as Sergei pushed it open, the sound echoing through the forest like a warning, revealing a dark and dusty interior. It was cold and damp inside, as if the house hadn't seen warmth and light for a long time. Cobwebs hung from every corner, giving the impression that the house had been abandoned for many years. The air was filled with the musty smell of desolation. It was as if time itself had stopped here, leaving the house captive to the past.
Well, kids, let's air this place out and get the fireplace going, said Sergey, trying to breathe life into this place. We'll get this place whipped into shape in no time, he added, hoping that a little effort could turn this house into a cozy retreat for his family.
Despite Sergei's optimism, it took them several hours to make the house even remotely habitable. They swept away years of dust and cobwebs, aired out the musty rooms, and finally got the fire going in the old stone fireplace. As darkness fell, As the flames cast flickering shadows on the walls, it felt like life was getting back to normal. Lisa and Masha, forgetting their initial apprehension, giggled and played on the floor, while Sergei entertained them with stories of his childhood camping trips. Anna, however, couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had gripped her upon arrival. She busied herself with preparing dinner, trying to ignore how the wind seemed to moan in the trees outside the window.
Is everything all right, Anya?
I don't know. This place, it's strange.
She whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackling fire. Later that night, as the girls slept soundly in their makeshift beds, Anna lay awake, listening to the symphony of the forest outside the window. The wind seemed to whisper her name, and she could have sworn she heard footsteps on the porch beneath their bedroom window. She was almost asleep when a soft thud from the corner of the room made her jump.
I sat up in bed, heart pounding in my chest, and peered into the darkness. And that's when I saw her, a small porcelain doll lying on the floor next to an old, dusty trunk. The doll was dressed in a faded blue dress, her once bright eyes now dull and lifeless.
As she leaned down to pick it up, she noticed a small handwritten tag tied to the doll's wrist. It read, Lisa. The next day, as Anna tried to distract herself from the grim thoughts by making breakfast and cleaning the house, Sergei decided to inspect the old trunk. Anna tried not to think about the strange events of recent days, immersing herself in routine chores. She hoped that this would help her to distract herself and regain a sense of normalcy. He found it tucked away in a dark corner of the attic, the wooden surface of the chest covered in a thick layer of dust. The attic had long been abandoned, and it seemed that no one had been up here in years. Sergei struggled through cobwebs and old boxes until he came across the chest. The lock, rusted and brittle with time, crumbled easily in his hands, and he lifted the heavy lid with a groan. Inside the chest were many old things that seemed to hold an entire era within them. Sergei felt curiosity wash over him.
Inside, among the yellowed linen and moth-eaten clothes, I discovered a small leather-bound diary. It looked like it hadn't been opened in ages. I carefully picked it up, feeling the pages rustle beneath my fingers. The pages were covered in elegant beaded handwriting, the ink faded but still legible. I began to read, and a story unfolded before me full of secrets and mysteries. Every word written by Evdokia seemed to come alive on the pages.
The diary belonged to a woman named Evdokia, the grandmother of the house's previous owner. She described her life in this house, her joys and sorrows, but also the strange events that happened around her. As Sergei delved deeper into the diary, he was overcome with growing anxiety. He couldn't believe his eyes, reading about what had happened in this house many years ago. Fear and anxiety grew with each passing page.
I read about strange occurrences, objects moving by themselves, disembodied whispers at night, and an ever-growing sense of dread permeating the house. Evdokia described how she tried to find an explanation for these phenomena, but to no avail. Evdokia believed that the house was cursed, that it was inhabited by an evil spirit that could not tolerate their presence. She wrote about her attempts to exorcise the spirit, but they all ended in failure. The house seemed to have a life of its own, full of secrets and dangers.
Sergei slammed the diary shut, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what to do with this information. Thoughts swirled in his head that it could all be true. He felt fear gripping him tighter and tighter. He couldn't shake the thought that he had stumbled upon something dark and dangerous. The forest surrounding the house now seemed even more ominous, and Sergei couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He knew that there were many more mysteries and dangers ahead of him,